Hello, everyone. Welcome to beautiful Morro Bay, California, on the central coast of California. And I'm here at Morro Bay State Park. My name is Robin, and I'm an interpreter here for California State Parks. So behind me, we have Morro Bay. And you guys are super lucky. It was raining, it was dumping earlier today, but the skies have opened up for you. It's beautiful today. So I want to thank you all for joining me here at Morro Bay State Park. Again, my name's Robin. And I want you guys to get a little prepared. So maybe grab a piece of paper, a pen, a pencil, some sort of writing utensil, and just jot some notes down. We're going to be talking about marine protected areas, or MPA for short. So go ahead and grab that piece of paper and a writing utensil. We'll be talking about marine protected areas. And right now you are at Morro Bay State Park. So this is beautiful Morro Bay here. We've got Morro Rock in the distance. Morro Rock is actually known as a volcanic plug. So you can kind of think of that like a volcano pimple. It was never popped. It just solidified right there. And again, you guys are super lucky. It was dumping earlier today, and now the skies are super clear. You can actually see what it looks like outside. So hello again, my name's Robin. We're going to be talking about marine protected areas, or MPA for short. So go ahead and grab your piece of paper, a writing utensil. Go ahead and get started. So marine protected areas are much like our land parks. So any land park that you've been to before, think about this in your mind. Consider what parks you've been to before. Maybe it's a national park, a provincial park, a state park, like Morro Bay State Park, where we are right now, live from Morro Bay State Park. But these MPAs aren't on land. So think about where they might be. These marine protected areas are actually in marine environments. So they're under the water, they're under the waves. Marine protected areas are like land parks, except they're in the water. So why do we go to land parks? Why do we like to visit land parks? Do we like to play in land parks? Do we like to see wildlife? Maybe think about different wildlife that you've seen at different parks you've been to. If it's a park down the street from your house, maybe you've seen some squirrels or ducks. You've been to a state park or a national park, whether it's at the beach or in the mountains, maybe you've seen a bear or a bobcat or a mountain lion, maybe a bald eagle. Depending where you're at, you've probably seen all kinds of wildlife at land parks. And that's what's so neat about these marine protected areas, or MPA for short, is that they're protected. We can visit them, we can recreate that in them. So on this bay here, what do you think you'd like to do if you were to visit Morro Bay? Would you like to kayak? Would you like to stand up paddle? Maybe you're a diver and you want to go under the water and see what's underneath. Super beautiful, lots of eelgrass and kelp and all kinds of wildlife. Or maybe you're a land lover and you want to just enjoy from the shore. You can hang out on the sand spit over here, or hang out in the little town of Morro Bay, just walk along the Embarcadero and enjoy this beautiful marine protected area, or MPA, from the safety of dry land. So these marine protected areas are so neat because they're like land parks. They're places for wildlife to thrive and for us to enjoy and recreate. They create abundance in those areas. So I have a little picture to share with you guys. So I'm just going to have you guys look at this for a second and notice what it says. MPAs are like underwater parks. So like we mentioned, we go to land parks because we love to play. We love to go hiking or maybe biking. Maybe some of you are birders out there and you'll take binoculars and look at the birds and the different wildlife. So we love to go to parks to play as well as to see this wildlife. So MPAs are so nice because if you're in the water, you're able to see more of this abundance. These areas are protected. The areas are protected and set aside for this wildlife to thrive and for them to interact with each other naturally, how they would normally interact. So if you look at this little picture here, we have a dividing line down the middle. And on one side, it says unprotected. And on the other side, it says MPA. And remember, MPA is a short way of saying Marine Protected Area. So I'm going to have you guys, on that piece of paper that you grabbed, I want you to write down three different things, three things about this paper. And what those things are, I want you to take a look at both sides. And I want you to write down three differences that you see from one side to the next. So on that unprotected side, how is it different from the MPA side? Or vice versa, how is the MPA side different from the unprotected side? So go ahead and write down three different things about this, some observations that you're making about the two different sides on that dividing line. We have an unprotected side and an MPA on the other. And just jot down three different things, some observations to make about this illustration. We've got lots of migrating birds in the area right now, so if you're lucky and you listen, you might be able to hear them off in the distance. They're pretty loud on my end. So again, on this illustration, just jot down three differences you see from one side to the next. So a couple things that you might have noticed is that on the MPA side, there's a lot more life in general, right? We've got a lot more fish. We've got someone floating on the surface, and if anybody's recognized that certain species, that is a sea otter. More specifically, it's a southern sea otter. That's the kind of sea otter that we have here in Morro Bay. It's the southern sea otter. So we've got lots of fish, we've got a southern sea otter, and we've got some birds on the top. If you know what those birds are, go ahead and write that down. What kind of birds do you think they are? You kind of have to look up close. It's definitely a kind of seabird. And they're not gulls. They've got these long beaks, and they actually have a big pouch under their beak. And under that beak, in that pouch, they can carry up to 3 gallons of water. Or maybe 3 gallons of fish, because this is what they eat. And so that's why they hang around in this MPA, because you can see there's a lot more fish in that MPA than there is on the other side. So observations we're making about this, on the MPA side, we've got a lot more life in general, right? And on the unprotected side, we have a lot less life. We've got a couple fish, and you can see one little stalk of green stuff that little fish is trying to hide behind. Does anybody know what that is? Go ahead and write it down if you think you know what that is. On the MPA side, you can see we have a lot of it, a whole lot of it. And when you see a lot of it like that, it's known as a forest. If anybody's guessed kelp, you are right. On the MPA side, you can see we have an entire kelp forest. And on the unprotected side, we only have one little stalk of kelp. And you can see that little fish trying to hide behind that kelp, because fish benefit from that kelp so much. They use it as a way to hide from predators. It keeps them from spending a lot of extra energy swimming away from these predators. So when they have that nice big kelp forest, they're sheltered and protected. They can eat and rest, and they don't have to worry so much about hiding and being exposed. And also on the surface of the unprotected water, you can see that we have a boat and someone fishing, an angler. And in unprotected waters, you're able to fish. A lot of us are able to fish. Some of you might be thinking, I eat fish. And that's where our fish usually comes from, is from unprotected areas. And MPAs, they have different restrictions. MPAs, marine protected areas, have different restrictions on whether you can fish or not fish. And it's all decided depending on the abundance of different species within that ecosystem, within that MPA. So go ahead and take a look at those observations that you wrote down. Maybe you wrote down some that I mentioned. And just think about that ecosystem, all of those different animals interacting with each other. And what's so neat about the MPA side, in our marine protected areas, you have more wildlife, you have more life in general, and you're able to, these animals are able to interact with each other how they normally would. They don't have any interference, which creates for a more healthy marine ecosystem. So this leads me to a couple guests that I have. I hope you guys are ready to meet them. So this is my first guest. This here is a small rockfish. This small rockfish lives in an unprotected area, just like on the illustration we saw. Maybe this fish is even the one hiding behind that one little stalk of kelp. So this fish lives in an unprotected area and has a little bit less resources available to her. She has a little bit less food, and she's constantly having to swim away from those predators because she doesn't have a big kelp forest to keep her safe for her to hide in. So she's going to be spending more energy, which makes her a little bit smaller. So that's why she's about this big, and this is about as big as she's going to get. But let's just say that this small rockfish living in an unprotected area is going to lay some eggs. I'm going to have you guys guess how many young she can have per year. So on your piece of paper, go ahead and write down how many eggs you think this small fish can lay. I'll give you a couple seconds. How many eggs do you think that this small rockfish living in an unprotected area can lay? All right, if you've got your number written down, go ahead and keep it in your mind. And now I'm going to ask you all to give me a drum roll. I want to hear that loud, audible drum roll because you're going to hear the answer. So can I get my drum roll, please? This small rockfish can lay 150,000 eggs. Go ahead and write that on your paper. That is phenomenal. For this small little fish to lay 150,000 eggs, that's quite a lot. But something we also have to consider about certain wildlife is that they lay or that they give birth, depending on the animal, to so many, to more babies because they are considering that maybe half of those might not make it. So fish in particular, they're going to have more young to make sure that their young have the best chance of survival. So this leads me to my very special second guest. So this here is also a rockfish. And you can see that this rockfish is a little bit bigger, quite a bit bigger. This rockfish is super lucky and has an MPA in her neighborhood. So she's able to have a little bit more resources available to her. She's able to be a little bit more protected. And she has a kelp forest that she can find and hide away in if she's being chased away from any predators. So just like we talked about that small fish laying eggs, how many eggs do you think this medium-sized fish can lay? The small fish can lay 150,000 eggs. So if this fish is lucky enough to have an MPA near her, in her neighborhood, and she's able to get a little bit bigger, she's able to get a little bit healthier, how many eggs do you think that this rockfish can have? Go ahead and write it down on that piece of paper. So our small fish can lay 150,000 eggs. How many eggs can our medium-sized fish lay? I'm gonna get you ready for that drum roll. I wanna hear it loud and proud. Are you guys ready for the answer? Drum roll, please. This fish can lay 700,000 eggs. 700,000 eggs. So remember, our small fish was 150,000 eggs, and our medium fish is 700,000. Why on earth, now consider this, why on earth can this medium-sized fish lay that many more eggs than the small fish? I want you to write that down. How many, or why? Why can this medium-sized fish lay more eggs than the small fish? Think about it. Where does each one live? Why is it that one is able to lay more than double, probably more than triple, I think, than the other one? That's a lot. So go ahead and write that down. And in the meantime, I'm going to introduce you to my very special guest. My very, very special guest. So this fish is much bigger, and she's got a special name. Her name is Boff, and I want you all to say that with me. Boff. It's B-O-F-F-F, and it stands for big, old, female, fertile fish. Go ahead and say that again. Boff. Maybe even write that down on your paper, because it's a special name. She's pretty famous out here. So Boff is a big, old, female, fertile fish, and she lives in a marine protected area. She's living the high life. She lives in a marine protected area, and she's got loads of resources available to her. She's got a giant kelp forest that she can hide and rest and eat and lay her young, and she's living that high life, very protected, not spending any extra energy, swimming away from predators, reserving that energy for her health, so that's why she's able to get a lot bigger. She's not spending that extra energy swimming away, and she has a lot more food available to her. So if our small fish can lay, let me hear you guys say it if you know, if you wrote it down, 150,000 eggs, our medium-sized fish can lay 700,000 eggs. How many eggs do you think Boff can lay? Go ahead and think about it. Feel free to get creative. Think exponentially how many they might lay. Maybe just take a wild guess. How many eggs do you think Boff can lay? The small fish can lay 150,000 eggs. The medium fish can lay 700,000 eggs. And Boff can lay, you guys know the drill. Drum roll, please. Boff can lay 1,700,000 eggs. Oh my gosh. Go ahead and write that whopping number down. 1,700,000 eggs. And go back to that last question about why the second fish can lay more eggs than the first fish. And that answer that you put down, do you think that applies for Boff as well? Boff can lay so many more fish because she lives in a marine protected area. She has a lot more resources available to her. She's able to swim around freely without any stress or any swimming away quickly, hiding from predators. She has that nice big kelp forest to keep her safe and protected. Good job, everyone. Go ahead and write down any last observations you want to bring up about Boff or Rockfish. And in the meantime, I'm going to take you back to that picture. So go ahead and take this time to think about Boff and those three different amounts that those three different fish living in different areas can lay. And how absolutely phenomenal that is. They're all the same kind of fish. They all just live in different areas. So we're going to go back to this picture here. MPAs are like underwater parks. And let's just look at that MPA side and all of those fish. Let's just say that all of those fish on the MPA side are all Boff. They are all big, old, female, fertile fish living in an MPA, living that high life. And let's say that all of those Boff lay 1,700,000 young. That's a lot of fish, right? So imagine all of those fish in the MPA laying that many eggs. Do you think all of those fish babies are going to stay in the MPA? Write down your answer on that paper. Do you think all of those fish are going to stay in the MPA? Imagine each one of those fish laying 1,700,000 young. So did some of you maybe say they would stay in the MPA? Maybe some of you said that they are going to another area. If you said that they're gonna go spill over into the unprotected area, you are right. Those fish there, the baby fish, will spill over into the unprotected area. Because you have to remember that this dividing line here, it's not a fence or a net, it's all open water. It's all open water, so those fish can freely go wherever they want. So they're gonna spill over into that unprotected side, and this is what's known as the spillover effect. Go ahead and write that down. The spillover effect. All of that abundance growing within that MPA are spilling over into the surrounding areas, into the unprotected waters. So you can think of these MPAs like charging stations. They're just pumping life into the surrounding unprotected waters, pumping our oceans with life and abundance. And having fish on that unprotected side, having more fish there, who do you think that benefits? Think about that. Who do you think it benefits to have more fish in our unprotected waters? Who do you think it benefits to have more fish in the unprotected area? Do you think it's going to benefit animals that eat fish? Maybe it will benefit the pelicans, because the pelicans, they eat the fish, right? Lots of animals eat fish. And so by having a larger area to have more fish, the animals that eat these fish will have more area to hunt or get their food. Who else do you think benefits from having more fish in unprotected waters? Maybe that fisherman up there, that angler. That angler is probably trying to feed their family or maybe run a business. And by having more fish there, in that unprotected water where they're able to fish, they're going to benefit as well too, right? By feeding their family, feeding themselves, or running their business. And now, I know we have that raise hand feature. I want everybody to raise their virtual hand and tell me if they eat fish. Raise your virtual hand if you eat fish. And if you eat fish, I want you to raise your hand again if you think that having more fish in unprotected waters benefits you. By having more fish in our unprotected waters, it's going to benefit those of us that eat fish. It's going to provide us with more food and more resources. So by having more fish in our unprotected waters, we're able to survive, other animals are able to survive, and we're having an overall healthier ecosystem. We're able to have more life pumping into our waters from these marine protected areas. So now we talked about, oh my gosh, 27, so many people eat fish. It really benefits us, right? So we talked about what marine protected areas are, and we talked about how they benefit us. But what are ways do you think that we can help our oceans? So go ahead and write that down on your piece of paper. What are ways that we can help our oceans? Maybe it's something really small. Maybe it's something you already do. Maybe it's something you do daily or weekly. What are ways that we can help our oceans? We talked about ways that oceans help us by providing us with food and recreation. We're able to play. So ways that we can help our ocean are many. Little things like turning off the tap when you're brushing your teeth, making sure you're throwing away your trash rather than throwing it on the ground. And maybe if you even see trash on the ground, whether you threw it away or not, picking it up can make a really big difference. Because if you think about it, the trash on the ground usually always ends up where? Go ahead and write that down if you think you know where trash usually ends up. If it's not in the trash can and it's on the ground, it will usually get swept up either by wind or rain or in our creeks or waterways and end up in the ocean. So by making sure that we pick up trash and we keep it out of our ocean can make a really big difference. Other ways that we can help our oceans are by remembering our 3 R's. So write those down if you know what those are. Those 3 R's. I'll give you a hint. One of them is recycle, which should be our last resort. And our first 2 that we should always consider first, reduce and reuse. So by being mindful about what you're using and seeing if you can reduce, seeing if you can use less. And also reusing. So go ahead and grab those virtual hands again, get them ready for this question I have for you. Raise your virtual hand if you have a reusable water bottle. Reusable water bottle or anything reusable. Maybe you have a reusable bag or lunch pail. Maybe you have reusable utensils. Maybe you have a reusable straw. There's all kinds of options now to have reusable items to help us take care of our ocean, because our ocean takes such good care of us by providing us with food and one really important thing. So we talked about how the ocean can provide us with food, but there's one thing that we're all doing right now that the ocean is helping us with. And I want you to consider what you think that might be and write it down on your paper. What do you think the ocean is helping us with right now? We're all doing it. I'll give you guys a couple more seconds to write it down on your paper. The ocean provides us with air. The ocean provides us with the oxygen that we breathe. So most of us know what photosynthesis is, and we're familiar with it being on land. So plants on land providing us with oxygen. But there's also plants in the ocean. And if you think about it, there's more ocean than there is land. So the ocean is also providing us with air. For every 2 breaths that we take, 1 of them comes from the ocean. So I have a little exercise. And I hope you'll all join me. We're going to take 2 big breaths together and thank the ocean for 1. Raise your hand if you're ready. I'll wait for those numbers. So our exercise is we're going to take 2 big breaths together and thank the ocean for 1. Because for every 2 breaths that we take, 1 of them comes from the ocean. All right, are you guys ready? I want you to close your eyes and get ready to take a deep inhale, and I'll guide you. Deep inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. And now say thank you, ocean. Say it to your family. Say it to the ocean. Just like the ocean takes care of us, I want all of you to take care of each other. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I had so much fun. And I'm hoping you all have a beautiful day. Happy MPA Monday, everyone.